Hello, and welcome back to the Distant Tourist Podcast, the podcast where each week we look at one of Japan's 47 prefectures. My name is Robert.
And I'm Thomas.
And we are back after a short hiatus. Thomas, you want to explain why we were gone for a bit?
Yeah, sure. We have both been slammed with finals. Everything's been pretty much hitting us hard with taking 2 Japanese classes. One is hard, 2 is very hard. So we had to really focus on that. So we weren't really able to take the time. We weren't really able to kind of focus on the podcast during that time. And we wanted to give you guys the best episode possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, no hurried episodes here. So with that being said, we are returning this week with Gifu. And Thomas, do you want to kind of give us the background of Gifu? Because I know you did a lot of research there.
Yes. So Gifu is in the center of Japan. Mm-hmm. It's actually pretty much the dead center of Japan. Mm. Even during the Warring States period, it was said that if you own Gifu, you own Japan. Just because Gifu was just such a stronghold. It's such an important area in Japan. During the time, it had a lot of soap production, paper production, and then also it was the center, the location of Japan. Like it was in the dead center of Japan. So all of these things made it like the key spot for warlords. So that's why the saying is if you own Gifu, you pretty much own Japan. Also, there's even another castle there. So yeah, because of it was a replica of Oda Nobunaga. Because Oda Nobunaga was the one that seriously thought that owning Gifu was the key to winning everything.
So it was his strategy then?
Yes. So they built a replica of Nobunaga's castle in Gifu.
Oh, okay.
Which is still there today.
Yeah, same original?
Yes. But the replica was made relatively recently, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
That's pretty interesting.
Also, there's a few things that are very kind of old-fashioned in Gifu. First is the Shirakawa-go. This area is a region in Gifu that is a UNESCO site, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes. So this has old buildings that are about 250 years old.
Oh, actually, before I forget, for people who don't know, do you want to explain what UNESCO is?
Why don't you describe it?
Well, I'm gonna be real. I don't remember.
Well, UNESCO is kind of like what being a UNESCO World Heritage Site means is that the entire world has agreed to not disrupt this area. So let's say a war breaks out, it is off limits to attack this area.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a safe haven.
Kind of. It is pretty much saying like there is such cultural history here that if it was lost, it would be a serious like devastation to world history, to humanity.
Oh, okay.
So that is why it's called a UNESCO World Heritage Site, because it's just so important of history there that it is preserved and everyone has agreed not to touch it.
Okay.
So yeah, in these areas, the most popular, or I guess the biggest part, is the village. That is why it is a World Heritage Site, because it actually depicts what it was like living in Gifu 250 years ago. Like the buildings are 250 years old.
Oh, so they're still maintained?
Yes.
Okay.
They are thatched roofs. So a thatched roof is pretty much like the grass. Like you kind of see the white woven grass roofs. That is a thatch roof. And they still have to be rethatched every year. So there's the constant maintenance of these houses. However, because it is so flammable, it is surprising that these buildings have been here for 250 years.
Yeah.
Just because, not people trying to go out and light them on fire like most of Japan did during the Warring States period, but also just straight lightning strikes. This is up in the mountains. Gifu is actually a very mountainous area, high in elevation. During the winter, it gets a lot of snow. This is actually the place where they did the Winter Olympics, Japan's Winter Olympics. They actually did it in Gifu.
Oh, that's actually pretty impressive.
Yes. So it has a massive pool during the winter as well, just because it's so amazing. But for these buildings, they are called Gasho Zukuri. Sorry if I've mispronounced that a little bit. And it means constructed like hand prayers. Oh. So if you imagine, clasping your hands together for a prayer, that's pretty much what the roofs look like. Like your hands are clasped together. They kind of go up like your hands in prayer.
Oh, okay.
That is their way of kind of keeping the heavy amounts of snow, because since it is so high up in the mountains, it does get a lot of snow.
Yeah.
So they were able to construct this kind of roof that pretty much is able to withstand the heavy snow. Also, it's just really interesting because it does look like a hand when you're looking at it. It does look like a hand in prayer. Also, they are made without any nails. So, like modern constructions, even something built out of wood, you have some sort of iron in there, screws, nails, whatever. However, nothing has nails in these.
Oh, so it's kind of going back to like how we were discussing castles a couple episodes ago, and how it's all just comes together, like through the correct architecture, I guess you could say.
Yes. So there's certain wood slots. So a thing of wood would slot into another piece of wood. And this actually was amazing because not only did you not need nails, and it was easy to rebuild, but they also helped with earthquakes.
How so?
Because there's no nails, they sway easily.
Oh.
So when an earthquake comes and rumbles everything, it is swaying with the earthquake, and is able to pretty much go with it without having to tumble all the way down.
So similar to how skyscrapers are kind of designed to kind of sway slightly.
Yes, kind of. And so that's why they are also extremely good for earthquakes. And Japan is prone to a lot of earthquakes, because it is also Japan is literally on the edge of two continent peninsulas.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That is how Japan first started, and that's why it's so mountainous. Is because it is right on the line. So, yeah, that is how Japan became Japan. But yeah, also that they have a bunch of earthquakes. So when you go there, if you feel an earthquake, it's kind of like a little bit of a rumble. You're just kind of like, most of Japan just kind of is used to it. There's obviously major earthquakes that a lot of people are worried about. However, there are smaller earthquakes that people are just kind of used to.
Interesting.
Yes.
I mean, I can say it's too different from here in California, where, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been through my fair share of earthquakes, and it's just like whatever now.
I grew up in an area that didn't really have too much earthquakes. I think the only time I've heard of anyone actually have felt an earthquake up where I used to live, because I lived in Northern California. So the only time someone has ever said that they felt something was when the massive San Francisco earthquake happened. They felt kind of like the after effects of it. How it kind of keeps on going.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say that they felt that, but personally, never earthquakes. But anyway, that has the UNESCO site is extremely interesting, I think, especially if you're a history nerd, because you can literally walk around as if it was 250 years ago and look at these designs, because the architecture of these buildings are something else. It is amazing. Also, you can stay in them.
Oh, really? They actually keep it open to people?
You can stay in kind of like a hostel. There are certain buildings that you can stay in, and you can kind of get the full, I guess, effect of what it's like to live there. But for most people, they make a day trip out of it, where they go in and they just kind of look around, walk around, and and then they are off back. But it's because it's so far kind of out in the mountains. It's really a big tourist spot more than anything. So, also, another thing that I found that also is something that is old to this area is cormorant fishing.
I can tell the fishing part, but what is cormorant?
Cormorant is a bird that has like a long neck. It holds the fish in its neck, kind of.
So they fish with the birds.
Yes. So what they do is it kind of sounds a little bit bad, because what they do, the technique of it, is they tie a rope around this bird's neck. So then, to a certain size, so then the bird can eat fish that are smaller fish. But the bigger fish that they catch end up being like staying in their neck, and then they pretty much regurgitate it back up on the boat, and that would be one caught fish.
Oh, I mean, I'm glad they just clean it, because I'm assuming they would.
Yes. But pretty much what the bird does is it dives down. So it's not like it just kind of cruises on the top. It actually full on dives into the water and catches the fish and then comes back out. And then there's the rope to make sure that they don't swallow big fish. And then there is also a leash to make sure that they come back.
Oh, okay. And I'm assuming these aren't wild birds then.
I'm very certain that they are trained. There's actually like cormorant fishing masters that are responsible for the birds, for making sure that everything is okay. And this has been like a big thing in Gifu City for over like 1,300 years.
So that's a base tradition then.
Oh yeah, so it's not just like within the past couple hundred years have they been doing this. This has been something that's been practiced for a very long time. That's been passed down, and this is another reason why people want to go to this area is to witness the fishing, because apparently seeing these birds just flying like straight into the water and catching a fish and then flying, like pretty much shooting back out, is apparently supposed to be spectacular.
Interesting. So I'm getting a strong sense of tradition from everything we're talking about here.
Yes. So even though it does seem cruel that they are tying a rope around the bird's neck,
Yeah.
it is very much tradition. It is very much, this has been in practice for over 1,300 years. Even though there is a rope around their neck, these birds are treated very well.
Okay.
This is just the practice of how the fishing is done. The birds still get a lot of fish from it for themselves, and also they are just cared for really well. So it's just the initial kind of like, oh my gosh, but if you consider that this thing's been around for 1,300 years, then you kind of go, okay, I understand.
I mean, I'd imagine be optimized at this point.
Yes. It's practiced. It's been still very passed down for generation to generation. And there's also a time period that they do it. So they don't do it like every day like year round. They don't do that.
Okay.
It is only from May to October.
Oh, okay. So it's a very selective time.
Yes. But even during that time, they do go daily doing it for the sightseers. But outside of that time, you can still visit the birds in their enclosure, but you won't be seeing them fishing. So,
I mean, that's pretty interesting. That's quite the, I would say, unique technique to collect fish.
yeah, it's supposed to be spectacular, apparently, and it's something I definitely do want to see. It's since it is such a big tradition. I want to see what what it looks like. So, what did you find? Thinking about kind of food aspect of things, what did you find?
Yeah, so I decided to take a more, well, I guess I'd say it's still a tradition, but I'd say instead of looking to fish, I decided to look specifically for beef and specifically Hida beef.
Hida?
Yeah, which is like Gifu Prefecture's like unique type of Wagyu beef, which I will say I've had Wagyu beef a couple times in a couple of different places. In terms of quality, I could not say, but every time I had it, it was usually in a nicer restaurant. But in terms of Japan, the beef that most people would usually refer to is Kobe beef. That's the one that usually people talk to, but or talk about. But Gifu has like their own unique style of Wagyu beef.
Oh,
And one of the things before even just tasting that you can just kind of notice before you cook is that the marbling in the meat itself has like a snowflake pattern, which I feel
whoa.
is kind of convenient for the heavy snows that happen there.
but where does this kind of cut come from? Do you know, kind of like where on the body?
I don't know the specific cuts. I did at one point, but not right now. I know that they get it from a specific cattle that they oh my gosh, how would I phrase this? Like it's not like if you say go to a ranch here in America and you'll find like hundreds of thousands of cattle just all herded up. Like it's very left natural to roam, raised in their own specific kind of way as natural as possible to avoid um, lowering the quality of the end product, I guess you could say. And so that's how Wagyu beef, or the specific cattle that is used to create Wagyu beef, gets like its own unique marbling and its own unique flavor compared to a lot of other meats that you can find elsewhere.
Because it's like the area, the food that it's eating.
Yeah, like
That's what
part of
gives it its flavor.
Yeah. So it's very specially produced, I guess is the best way to put it.
Don't worry, you're talking to a guy that grew up in the country, so I know all about like the raising of cattle and stuff like that. Where actually you'll be surprised of how many cattle was just raised out in the kind of like, here's a pasture, here you go. But still, yeah, a lot of the times the meat does change off of their diet. That's why here in the States, there's actually regulations of what you can and cannot feed your cow, and how much you should be feeding them, how often you should be feeding them. It's like this whole regimen of like instructions on how to feed the cow to get the best, like marbling, like you said. And so that must mean that Gifu's area is just so special in terms of vegetation, even to be able to have such a unique marbling.
Oh, most definitely. And while I couldn't find anything to confirm this, my current theory in my head is that considering how much of an effort they put to keep the water clean there, I imagine it spreads to a lot of the other plant life there, and the cattle eating off of it, improves the end product.
I mean, the water in Japan in general is amazing.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But there are different ways that you could prepare Wagyu beef. I mean, for example, the one that I imagine most Americans would be familiar with is sirloin steak. You can just have it as a good old steak, eat it that way. One that I think was a little more interesting is yakiniku, which is like you get like like a small barbecue, and you get like small cuts of the meat, and you just cook it over a small little barbecue. Just not even that big. Like like most Americans assume it's like what 3 by I don't even can't get the dimensions of the barbecues here, but it's like really small, like one you can just put on the floor.
Also, as a fun fact for all those Japanese learners, yaki stands for like grilled. So literally, niko literally stands for grilled beef.
Yep.
And that's exactly what it is.
I mean, straight up. I have a desire to try it this way because I'm so used to having steak prepared on such large barbecues here in America. But I'm curious to see if the flavor changes if you cook it on a small barbecue. Another one I would like to try is sukiyaki, which is like a hot pot where you throw a bunch of ingredients into like a pot with like a oil simmering on it. But the interesting thing that I found out is that after it's done simmering, what people will do is they'll take the finished meat out and then dip it in a scrambled egg yolk.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I mean, I have no idea as to the flavor, but it seems like an interesting.
Wait, and they just eat it like that? Just like
Yeah,
dip
just
it in and just.
Yeah, like it's just finished simmering. I don't, maybe the egg yolk can help cool it off a little.
I guess
I can't say for sure.
I've also heard that like a slimy texture is good. Like for a katsudon, a lot of the time like the actual katsu, like the fried pork cutlet that's on top of it, that is usually just covered in egg yolk as well. Traditionally, it is just like it's supposed to have like this crunchy yet slimy taste or like texture, and apparently that is what you want. Personally, I'm not a big fan of slimy,
I couldn't say
so
I
I
am either.
wouldn't be able to do that at all.
I would definitely try it to see what kind of flavor comes out. I couldn't say for sure that I would like it. That me, who's already kind of picky with what he throws eggs into, is already just kind of like sounds fun, but I'm not sure where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I think the one that I'm actually the most interested to try though is kushiyaki, which is basically like skewers that you put the meat onto. You grill it that way. Of course, you can put your own vegetables, stuff like that, kind of like a kebab.
Okay.
And I'm just curious because I hear prepared like also specifically in the idea of just throwing it onto a skewer. Just
But any kind of like sauce, like like we usually put like barbecue sauce or something, or marinated or something.
yeah. So for the most part, it's just salt, pepper, and a soy sauce marinade. And I mean, I appreciate the simplicity. I think that kind of speaks to the grade of the meat itself. If you can just enjoy it as is with just minimal seasoning. So I'm looking forward to that if I ever get a chance to try that. The oddball and the one I'm not quite sure I would want to try is beef sushi.
Beef sushi.
Yeah. So
Is it cooked? Like because usually when you hear sushi, people usually think raw fish on top of rice. So would it be raw beef?
It can be served raw, or it can be cooked with a blowtorch. Apparently,
A blowtorch.
I'm not even joking about that. I've tried beef sushi once. I don't think it was Wagyu. It was compared to like other sushi that I had tried. It was very different, as you might expect, and I don't know if I could recommend it in that setting, but perhaps in this setting, there's more of a flavor that
It's probably a better
yeah
meat, better beef.
yeah. It also helps that they serve it with a small little bit of egg yolk on the top. So
Egg yolk.
yeah, back to egg yolk. But yeah, those are like the main type of ways that they prepare that I really wanted to bring up right now. I mean, so far it sounds, it just sounds really good. Like beef in general just sounds really good to me. But the idea that like the conditions that the cattle was raised in is so different from anything here in America, creating such a completely different type of flavor as an end product just sounds really appetizing, for lack of a better term.
True.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about the Hida beef. Did you have anything you wanted to point out?
I mean, I've had the like kind of like a beef sushi before, but it wasn't like it was a marinated slice of beef onto like a thing of rice.
Mm-hmm.
And that tasted all right, but then again, it was also marinated
Mm-hmm.
and cooked, and I've only had it once. That was like the only time I ate like one little thing of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that would be amazing because like I'm just thinking about the marbling
Mm-hmm.
on the actual steak
Mm-hmm.
because usually you want a lot of marbling on steaks. That's what gives it its flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that would be really, really, really good. Um, moving over to more of a location side of things.
Yeah.
Did you find any your location that you really want to go to in this area?
Yeah, as opposed to the large copious amounts. Well, no, I should rephrase that. Kind of building off of Kagawa and the whole art island that they had there. I found a small location that is kind of known as Monets Pond. Excuse me, I might have butchered the pronunciation there, but the place is officially called Namonake. Excuse me, Namonaki Ike. Um, and the reason it's called Monets Pond is because apparently, like the way this pond just appears is that it looks just like an impressionist painting by Claude Monet, an author who, or excuse me, artist who was famous for his impressionist painting series, Water Lilies, which was like a specific set of artwork that he did.
Okay, which came first, the painting or the pond?
As I understand it, the painting definitely became famous first, but like people just began making the connection as more people saw this pond. So it kind of became kind of like a, people started making the connection, so it just kind of spread word of mouth until eventually it
Oh.
became kind of like famous for that. The big thing with the pond is that like there's no effects in place. There's no like specific lighting, no specific like coloration or fake plants or anything. No, it's just the pond. The pond just happens to look so much like the art, which
How
is
big is it?
it's like only I think it's only like 60 feet wide, something like that.
So pretty small.
Yeah.
It is a pond, not
Yeah.
a lake or anything like that.
It's not very big. And I find it hilarious to say like, oh, it looks just like the painting when in this case it's real life, and art imitates real life in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like almost like a weird circle back to just what we were trying to create anyway. A big thing, and again, this is kind of like the theme of what I've kind of been harping on, is like the water from the pond comes from the mountains, which again, as fresh as possible. Plant life in the pond just has like those very unique colors. Apparently, some that are even neon. If I have edit it right, there should be some pictures here for people who are watching on YouTube.
Oh.
But yeah, it's just I didn't see why people were interested in it until I saw the pictures together, because I didn't know about the water lilies artwork set. And then just to see that versus the pond, all of a sudden it just like the connection just feels stronger. It is also worth noting that the pond actually happens to be located near a shrine, Namichi Shrine, which happens to be a Shinto temple.
Hey.
Um, I mean, from what I hear, like the big attraction of that area is the pond, but it's like, if you're gonna go on the hike, I'd recommend just going to the temple anyway and just get the full experience.
Yes.
But I mean, that's pretty much the location I wanted to pick out. Like, it's
You
not.
gotta worship that kami,
I mean,
of the pond.
Yeah, thank you for the pond. I mean, I could have picked a much larger location, but I thought picking something I think smaller, more intimate, I think would be a better showcase of like lesser known things about Gifu.
Yes, that is true. For me, I chose the area of Ukuhira or Okuhira. This area is known for its hot springs.
Hey.
Most importantly, it's outdoor hot springs.
Ooh.
We see a lot of outdoor here in this area. There is 5 main towns.
Mm-hmm.
So Okuhira is actually just kind of like an area within Gifu. It has 5 towns, and there is a bath, like a outdoor bath, a onsen, in each town. So there's 5 in this area. It is apparently supposed to be like the place to go if you want to go to outdoor baths, because it also has a view of the northern Japanese Alps.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
So also they are kind of like hotels. So like a lot of onsens double as like a hotel. So you stay there, and then you can just kind of go to the bath whenever you want.
Ooh, that sounds very relaxing.
Yes, usually people unpack their stuff, go down to the onsen, spend like a little bit in the onsen, and then go back up and go to bed. And that's usually, I guess, the touristy onsen experience, I guess. Now the difference I did want to cover, the difference between an indoor and an outdoor onsen. Of course, there is in the words indoor and outdoor.
Yeah.
One is inside, one is outside. But a lot of people probably ask, which one should I go to? You know, like there's usually like, should I go to a indoor onsen like the like in Masayama, the Dogo onsen, or should I go to a more outside onsen that is like in these areas, the Okuhira area? What should I choose? And that kind of depends on the person. So if you want to actually be outdoors, having the cold air hit you as you're within this hot onsen, then outdoors is amazing. Also, outdoor will give you the whole experience of, I am outdoors. There's mountains off in the distance. You could even go at night, and usually there'll be stars out, so you'll be able to look up at the stars.
Oh, that sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. So I definitely want to go to an outdoor onsen. I definitely recommend going to both, just to kind of see which one you like better. But the indoor onsen is very much, you go there kind of for the aesthetics. So also, when you're at an indoor onsen, it is very much like painted on the walls. There's paintings. It's not like, just because you're indoors does not mean that it is plain and boring.
Yeah.
There is still a lot going on where there still is a lot of paintings on the walls for you to admire and look at. And it still is a very different atmosphere. It's a very different feel than an outdoor onsen, where you look out and you can see the mountains, you can feel the cold air. For some people, that's not really for them. It's like how cold it is, because when you're at an onsen, you are constantly getting in and out of the onsen. Usually the actual hot spring itself is so hot that you can't just hop on in. It is like you clean yourself first. You make sure you're totally clean. Then you dump yourself with hot or cold water.
Oh. Even outdoors?
Even outdoors. You dump yourself with cold water, and then you get into the onsen.
Okay.
Because it's just so hot. If you go from like hot water into even hotter water, you can pass out actually, because it's just so hot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's actually been people that do actually end up kind of passing out in the onsen.
Is it possible to burn your skin, or is that?
I'm not entirely sure on that. But I know that it is still dangerous, kind of, because it's just so hot.
Yeah.
Also, but then you kind of sit there and relax in the hot spring for a little bit. But then you will get really warm. And then what most experienced onsen goers get to is then once they get super, super hot, they get out of the onsen, dump themselves over with cold water again, and then get back in.
Oh, that's pretty clever.
Some people just kind of go until they do feel really hot, and then they get out and go, okay, I'm done. I'm just way too hot.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, there is no time limit for the onsen. There is no like you need to be in there for exactly 30 minutes. It is like you go until you want to get out.
No, no, man, we got to optimize. How long can I physically stay there without leaving?
Right. And so it's kind of like it really depends on you how long you want to stay in an onsen and how you kind of want to go about it.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to try the outdoor onsen a little bit more than the indoor. I mean, I want to try both, but
if you had to pick one, you'd pick outdoors.
yes. Also, within this area, there is the Hirayu onsen, which is the oldest and largest onsen in this area.
Oh.
It was discovered in 1560.
Discovered as in just that specific.
It was actually like full on discovered. So a lot of onsens are discoveries, where it'd be like a person stumbled across a hot spring, because these hot springs really are created just by water being pushed up out of the ground from volcanic activity. So they just kind of pop up. Like I'm not like they just kind of pop up out of nowhere. And this one was discovered in 1560s by a guy named Takeda Shigen.
Oh, okay.
Apparently this was like a military troop that was going through the region, and they found this hot spring.
What a good find.
And yeah, and this hot spring is actually supposed to cure like some skin diseases. It's supposed to be a cure for sensitivity to cold and skin disease. That's
interesting.
It's supposed to cure. So I definitely think that this out of all 5 of the onsens, this is the one I would want to go to.
Interesting. And okay, that's fair enough. But I mean, what about the other 4? Like, are like what makes them different? Because this just seems like this is the one to go to so far.
The other ones are all having different unique views of the Alps.
Oh, okay.
And like the area. One actually overlooks the air, like the valley between the Alps. Another one just is pretty much looking at the Alps. So it's kind of, it does have different views based off of the location. But this one, the Hirau Onsen, is actually the oldest one out of it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of where I want to go. You don't have to stay there, obviously. If you want to do a day trip, you can go there, and usually you have to pay between 500 and 2,000 yen.
Well, that's not a bad price, all things considered.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So that's like $5 to $20 for the exchange rate.
Yeah, rough estimate, but yeah.
Yeah, very rough estimate that it's about $5 to $20 depending on when you go. So you could always just take a day trip. Day trip to Gifu, but you know, I definitely kind of want to stay at an onsen because the idea of being in there at night looking at the stars sounds amazing.
Sounds like a very unique experience for sure.
Yes. So that is my area that I definitely want to go to. I think that is where we're going to end the episode for today.
I think so. I think I've gone through most of my notes. I believe you have as well.
Yes. So thank you everyone for listening. We are going to be definitely stepping up our social media aspect of this podcast. So go ahead and look up Distant Tourists on our Facebook page, Instagram, wherever you have social media. We're going to be getting things rolling here. So yeah, if you liked us, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, or whatever you want to do. Tell other people if you liked it or not. But yes, so yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next time.
Yep.